So let me talk about the history of OpenDaylight from a unique perspective of an engineer who had the privilege of being there from basically from the beginning. So the whole thing started for me on one day in January 2013, where my boss sent me a brief email saying, I want you to meet with these people about this new open source project that we want to put together with IBM. And he also gave me his usual pep talk saying, don't screw it up, only using the F word. So we started meeting with 6 people, engineers in the room, preparing like the blueprints for the controller, preparing for what we want to open source, how we want to do that. Funny, there were 3 people from Cisco, 3 people from IBM. I ran into 2 of those IBM people here at the summit. It's Vijay Pandey, who's now at Google, and the other is Colin Dixon, our TSC chair. So the other people from Cisco, they have moved on to greener pastures. Madhu Venugopal was one of them. He went on to found SocketPlane, which was acquired by Docker. So, overall, very high caliber group of people. So we were preparing for the summit, the initial summit that actually put together the whole thing, which happened then on the first week of February in 2013. And that's where the big guns came in, like the big Daves, Dave Ward, Dave Meyer, I saw him somewhere around here. Ben Fry from IBM, who was the head of open source at that time. And that's when actually this could be viewed as being the birthday of OpenDaylight. It's been a collection of the original Platinum members, which included big companies like Cisco, IBM, Citrix, medium companies like Brocade, and some startups like Big Switch Networks. It was very interesting times. As some of you probably may know, there were 2 code bases contributed initially to OpenDaylight. There was the Floodlight, and then there was what was at that point called Cisco One Controller. And really, it was a tight race between the 2 code bases. Which one is going to be chosen as the code base for OpenDaylight? Or maybe we could figure out how to create a new code base out of the 2. So the engineers were running from both teams, were running at high gear, doing demonstrations, preparing presentations and kind of presenting their case to the newly formed OpenDaylight community, which consisted of all the engineers and people from the founding members. The race was very close, and we even came to an idea that we should be merging the code bases. And this was a really great idea, but we were like we were having 2 race cars that we were trying to find out which one's going to be faster. And we wanted to merge them, and this would be kind of the merged code base. We would build a monster truck. Now, we would take components from wheels from this, and the body from that, the decals from yet another controller. And the idea was, if we have a combined code base, we can get advantages of both. It may not be longer the race car, but it would do the job. It would destroy everything else. And the 2 teams tried to made a go at it and didn't come to an agreement. And then Colin got together with Dave Erickson of the Stanford fame, and they create the Vixen Erickson proposal, the architecture. I don't understand it. I don't I don't think anybody does at this point, but it was a great proposal at the time and an attempt to consolidate two code bases that really would be very difficult to consolidate. In the end, one code base won, and that was the Cisco One Controller. And it won because of the secret weapon that it had, the SAL. At that point, really, Floodlight was the more mature code base, and it had deployments, but it wasn't very modular. What the Cisco had the One Controller code base had going for it was the modularity. And the modularity was built around this component in the middle called the SAL, Service Adaptation Layer. And again, when the community had to decide which code base to go forward and to build new solutions on, they decided that modularity would be more important than having a mature code base. And in hindsight, I mean, that was the kind of right decision. So the SAL really, with network people tend to think in layers, so it layered the system nicely into applications, the SAL, which was the secret sauce or the secret weapon, and then protocol plugins. And this enabled the controller to talk not only OpenFlow on the southbound, but any protocol that the designers or users or the community decided to implement. And it also allowed people to put applications on top of the controller that the designers of the controller and the implementers would not quite necessarily know at the beginning what they would be. So it's basically much more flexible in terms of the functionality, what could be done with the controller. So we had a SAL, and off it was into implementation. And in the end, it actually turned out we didn't have one SAL, we had two SALs. And those of you who suffered with us through hydrogen, you remember the AD SAL, the API-driven SAL. It's basically, it's about flexibility. And we really had two implementations, two different approaches to that middle layer. One was kind of API-driven, a little bit firm and not as flexible. So we took the flexibility to the next layer, to the next level with the ModelDriven SAL, which took any kind of networking or application level notions or concepts out of the controller and just basically focused the controller base on kind of pure plumbing. That way, the power was completely given to application developers who could define whatever functionality they want to have. Now, there were kind of three of us coming up with the concepts of the SAL. Neil acknowledged one person, Tony, in his keynote, and I would like to have another person, a key person acknowledged in this keynote that contributed majorly, and that is Robert Varga. Come on.
Come on up, Robert. So Robert is the most prolific contributor for OpenDaylight across all of the releases. And so we have this gift for you, which is travel and registration to 2 OpenDaylight events of your choice for free. Now, that has no benefit to me whatsoever, since I'm sure he might want to speak when he's at those. But in any event, you have that, and you get to pick your events and enjoy, and thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, guys.
So, Phil, you guys actually got a really good deal from Cisco with Robert. As a platinum member, we need to contribute 10 members, 10 engineers. So we've got 10 engineers contributed plus some, and then Robert counts for another 10. So off we go with SAL, and eventually the duel was won by the MD SAL. Now, everything was model-driven, so now we got into modeling. So we oh no, that's not. We're about inner beauty here. So we chose Yang as the modeling language. And the modeling really took off. You've got models going on in IETF, you've got models going OpenConfig, and everything, every functionality that is defined in OpenDaylight is actually defined in Yang models. So we really are in the modeling business. Now, I'd like to talk about the ogre. The Cisco team was originally perceived as being the ogre in a room. And, you know, it's the big bad guy who is going to squash all SDN innovation. And, you know, it's a notion that was perpetrated by some of the SDN startups that really wanted to change the world and, you know, kind of destroy Cisco and take its role in the world. And I think, as everybody has found out, and as we have proven over the years, we've been really good members of the community, and all of us that participated in the project have strived to build a community and to further the cause of OpenDaylight, if you will. So like the character in here, I mean, I think maybe we've been at times ugly, but we're a quite lovable ogre. Now, to conclude, I've really seen this mighty oak that OpenDaylight is becoming, grown from a small acorn, from that acorn that we started watering in that room 3 years ago, the 6 of us. And it's been exciting to see it growing in community, code base, use cases, technology, vendors, and products. And I'm really privileged to be a part of it, and I'd like to thank all of you for great friendships, and I learned a lot from you know, the community and everybody who's participated in the project. And just would like to say, let's keep it going for quite some number of years to come. Thank you.